And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Perles Plaza, Michigan State University. Michigan State 1-0 victory over Western Michigan last Friday. Getting ready to kick off on Saturday night against Boston College. Games on NBC, I think it is, Paul. It's going to be a lot of fun, that one. Big game already early in the season. A lot of people eager to see what Michigan State has. I thought that was an encouraging victory for Michigan State against Western Michigan the other day. And now Boston College coming into Michigan State with a chance. I don't sense a feeling of revenge having lost the ball at Boston College last year, but the lessons that if you're not close to your A game, you could end up getting letting an expensive victory get away as it was last year. It ended up keeping them out of a bowl game. So Michigan State, I think the focus is really good. I'm expecting Michigan State to play pretty good Saturday night.
I think revenge from a certain. I'll disagree with you just minorly. I think we had the defensive guys out today, the defensive coaches and defensive players. I don't think there's a revenge factor and a motivation with those guys. I think offense is different because I think for Aiden Childs it's personal. He played one of his poorest games of the season last year in really difficult weather circumstances for a kid from California, being cold and rainy and wet. But he threw 3 picks, including a pick at the end that cost him the game. But it was a tough game for that offense. A tough game, mistakes, there's a fumble on special teams. But for Aiden Childs, going back to the Big Ten Media Days, yeah, it's personal, and I think there is a revenge factor for him and for members of offense. Defense, I think if you went back and watched that game, there's a lot of times that they played pretty dang good in that game. They gave up the one late big play to the receiver late in the game, but I think that defense played pretty solid for the most part. But yeah, execution is going to be a huge part of it, and as an offense, Michigan State wants to prove that they can run the football and run the offense and play smart assignments on football, and they need to against Boston College.
Yeah, the revenge factor, it's not like an emotional revenge. It's like trying to, we even heard about it a little bit in the spring, guys wanting to prove that they should have won that game.
And they should have.
And they could have. Well, not when you throw 3 interceptions. Not when you have 2 terrible busts on defense late in the game. Don't deserve to win. Right. Did Nate Carter drop a touchdown in that game?
Nate Carter there was like a little rollout, and Childs had Nate Carter. It went right off his hands, and that was a tough game for Nate Carter. He had 9 carries for 9 yards in that game.
Credit to Boston College on that.
Yeah, but Childs also had some good plays where he scrambled a lot in that game. He averaged 6 yards a carry, and K-Ron Lynch-Adams, he had a fumble kickoff to open the first half, open the second half, and that really killed Michigan State. So you look at all those things,
man.
And then
how are you in the game and the road with all those things going on?
Because the defense played good, and
right.
And besides those busts late, and there were some personnel issues. But then you go back and look at it, Nick Marsh didn't play in that game. I forgot all about that until looking at that last night when you talk about all the missed balls that Childs could have thrown to Montorie Foster, and there's a bunch of them because I felt like Foster should have had 2 touchdowns in that game, but Nick Marsh didn't even play. So you have Jalen Smith, a guy who was he a redshirt freshman last year?
I think so.
And he hadn't played before, was a starting receiver last year, and I forgot about that as well. And then also you had the reshuffled offensive line where you had
Ramil making his first start at left tackle.
Yeah, and then you had
Baldwin at right guard.
And
for the first time.
And it was a lot different. So you look at all the things that kind of went wrong for Michigan State in that game, or the personnel type situations. They played a physical game, and they, in their minds, they should have won it. And I agree with what you're saying. You can't make those kind of mistakes. They agree with you, but they gave that game to Boston College.
And that's what we've heard from the players this week. They feel like they shot themselves in the foot, which is a cliche you hate to hear college football teams talk about, because usually a lot of times people say college football games are not won, they're lost. Michigan State certainly lost that game last year. And, when you talk about it in relation to where this team has grown, you mentioned some of the plays that got away. The running back had the long touchdown run down the left sideline. On that one, Cal Halliday was pursuing to the outside and turned the wrong way and ran into Malik Spencer, who's trying to over the really one of the strangest collisions I've seen among defensive personnel ever. I don't know what he was looking at. Cal Halliday, a good player, had a good career, always trying hard and all those things. But he basically blocked Malik Spencer. Play gets out, touchdown. The other one, the play late, Angelo Gross, who had a series of mishaps in general. I don't want to talk more about that. He tried his best. Good kid and all that. But man-to-man coverage, he got turned inside out, and the guy's open by 10 yards. Really Keystone Cops type of thing. Both of those touchdowns, which turned the game, one for about 40 yards, the other one for about 50 yards, on top of all those other things. My point is, the defense right now, I don't think is as susceptible to those Keystone Cops types of moments as that one was in week 4. Those 2 players are gone, first of all. Secondly, there's just more same-pageness. I mean, we watched Michigan State against Western Michigan. Western Michigan was not as good on offense as I expected. We didn't know what to expect because players are coming and going. But Michigan State on defense against Western Michigan, I mean, I've went back and watched it, looking at certain things a number of times. I want to go back and watch it again because to look at one specific thing. I'm not sure they played the same defense 2 straight plays the entire game in terms of different pressures or blitzes or coverages and stunts and so forth. Yet they were solvent. You didn't see them getting in each other's way and having mistakes. There was the one on the 4th and 12 play when they completed a pass, Western Michigan did, for a gain of 11. Santiago went over there, did a good job making a tackle. On that one, Ade Willie was over there, who had an excellent game, and I'm not sure that this was a mistake, but that was one game in which a player was kind of left open. Looked like there might have been a communication error, maybe, but they still rallied, got on the ground, got off the field. Other than that, the defense not only did a great job in terms of tackles for loss and stopping the run and all those things, but the same pageness with 30 players doing all kinds of coverages. The Joe Rossi defense right now, tightening screws, I think is ahead of schedule for a week 1 defense.
And I'll tell you what, you cannot do that unless you have really good safety play, really smart safeties. And, and Blue Adams was out today, the defensive backs coach, and he mentioned how smart and how confident he is in all 3 of his safeties. Nakai Martinez didn't play last week, but he presumably will be. Well, he's back in practice, so there's a good chance he'll play this week. But him, Amorian Smith, Malik Spencer, there's total confidence with Coach Adams in those safeties. And linebacker, I think you got some smart, intelligent linebackers between those 2 guys. Like, you look at that back end between the safeties, getting corners lined up, between the linebackers, getting guys lined up, and you got some veteran defensive linemen that I think are pretty good as well. The communication aspect is a big deal, and with them shuttling guys in and on and off the field as much as they did in week 1, to me that's the most impressive thing, that they were able to do that without having like big implosions. Because I expected, like 30 guys coming in and out of defense, and they didn't play that many minutes, 23 minutes of football. So because Western couldn't do much on offense, that's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of moving parts working well together, and that's a credit to the entire organization. And Joe Rossi is kind of an organization guy, so it's credit to him, but it's credit to the assistant coaches, but also a credit to the players on the field, starting with Jordan Hall, the guy wearing the green helmet, the green dot, communicating with the defensive coordinator, but also on the back end, because when you have good communication, when you have safeties that know what they're doing, that's the best way that's the best scenario to prevent busts.
Yeah, you talk about Blue Adams today saying that the safeties are how did he describe them? Students of the game is the
film junkies, football junkies.
Yeah.
But he basically came out and said he's got complete confidence in the mental side of the game from those safeties. And I we've seen a lot of good safeties over the years, but there hasn't been many times I've seen an assistant coach, especially one that doesn't divulge a lot of information, share to that level of his confidence level in his safeties. He believes those guys are legit. He believes those guys are like the quarterbacks of his secondary, and he has a lot of confidence in them. And that's one thing that puts Michigan State way ahead. One of many things that puts Michigan State way ahead on defense of where they were last year in the same game.
And they were multiple on defense. A lot of times you'll see a defense or a program that if they think they've got a game in hand, they'll just run a 4-deep shell and not change anything on defense, not wanting to show anything. Lloyd Carr did that a lot back in the old days. They would just play one defense against Bowling Green an entire game. Michigan State was rolling a lot of things out there. I think partly to win that game, but also to as a dry run, we're doing all these things, get on the same page and get it right. And those safeties, no problem with the corners because the safeties' communication was good. And Jordan Hall, very energetic with his communication also. And sometimes you'd see Western Michigan send somebody in motion and there might be a blitz coming off of it. I think there were some automatics based on motions that it's not the simplest thing in the world. So good job with that and going 2.5 deep in a lot of positions. And you bring in guys like Aisa Moa and Anelo Lafayette and Santiago and Cam Williams, guys that are our second and third string not playing a lot of snaps, but that allows them to go 100 miles an hour. Then other guys that were playing a lot of snaps, like Van Sumeren played a lot of snaps. Best game I think I've seen from him in terms of strength and defeating blocks and quickness when he would one gap. And Dunnigan, the best we've ever seen him play. They talked about him being quicker. You saw quickness with him when he one gapped, whether he's slanting inside. And he played hard a couple times. I don't know if it's a strict two gap or it was like a 90-10 heavy, but he'd get the defensive lineman leaning one way, but then when he would come with a one gap, he was undressing people and beating them with quickness and having a body lean to turn the corner like on that near safety earlier in the game. Dunnigan was excellent, and you can see why he's a starter there at the down defensive end position. A lot of pluses there on defense.
Yeah, how many linebackers? 7 linebackers played? 6 linebackers?
Something like that. Pretzloff was in early. Pulliam played. Darius Snow played.
Smaj Bridgman.
Bridgman, man, he made a play out on the edge on one where he defeated a block and not only made the tackle, made it with explosiveness at the end. I mean, that's a good second stringer, so to speak. Ade Willie looked good, looked quick, looked fast. Blue Adams today was talking about him, the size that he has, and he called him a pleasant surprise. And talking to Rossi in the summer, they felt confident in Ade Willie. And I was like, okay, I'll take your word for it. I mean, I didn't say that to him, but I'm thinking that to myself. Ade Willie, to his credit, from 1,000 miles from home, has been bouncing in and out of the playing group. Last year played some corner as an emergency, struggled, I give the kid full credit. I don't mean this in a disparaging manner, but some of the plays he made, some positive plays, were among the first positive plays he's made here. That might not be fair, but I always kind of thought that he was just a guy just trying to hold on thin ice. Now he's gone from guy to a accountable player. Now I think he's borderline plus player. Senior year, that's a great job for him to stick with it, and good job learning this system, and Michigan State finding a position for him. This is his first year at nickel. Maybe he's been a nickel all along, Paul.
I think he has.
And he was kind of out of position. Well, he's in position now, and Ade Willie looks like a veteran and maybe trending toward being a plus player.
Yeah, I think sometimes it comes down to the fact of guys, and we've seen this in the past where a guy starts out at safety and isn't a good fit for safety, but ends up being corner. I'm thinking all the way back to Greg Cooper, a kid out of Flint, and who's now a good trainer, but he struggled at safety. He found some legs at corner. I think now the nickel is a good fit for Ade Willie. He's got he looked really good, and I think he was playing out of position. But it's good that Michigan State doesn't give up on guys. It's good that they try to put guys in positions that are best suited to them, and I'm happy for him because those kind of stories of perseverance, working, getting incrementally better, and finding a home. Those are big deals. But
that's the way college football should be. He should be a redshirt junior right now, and he should have been thrust into those situations early in his career. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, and he's getting education too.
Yeah.
Kurt Richardson reminded me yesterday. We were talking about some guys from Detroit. Davion Prim, former running back, one of the first recruit of the Mel Tucker era, didn't do much on the field, but he got his degree. So that's what this is all about for a lot of these guys. It should be getting education. Ade Willie's stuck to it, and he has my respect for what he's done and developed. And there's a lot of guys I think like that in the program.
And he's got Bridgman behind him, who's excellent, looking pretty good there. Transfer from Michigan, he plays with some pop. So Michigan State's defense, I think, is going to be among the stories this weekend against Boston College. I expect Michigan State's defense to play well and play quick and be on the same page. Boston College, pretty good offense. Put up a big number against Fordham. Fordham, like you mentioned, 2-10, not a good FCS team coming out of the Patriot League. Boston College, new quarterback, this Dylan Lonergan. He actually beat out Grayson James, and Lonergan 26 of 34, 268 yards, 4 touchdowns. Transfer from Alabama. O'Brien recruited him to Alabama. Former top 200 national recruit. Throws a real pretty ball. I'm still watching him right now, but real pretty passer. Grayson James came in, was 5 for 5 for 190, if I read that right. Grayson James is the guy that beat out Castellanos midway through last season, which caused Castellanos to leave. Now, how much of that is Castellanos maybe not towing the line with the new coach? It's some of that. But anyway, James, the guy that kind of made Castellanos leave, Lonergan came in and beat that guy out. So quarterback, they've got some ability there, Paul.
Yeah, the whole Castellanos thing is interesting because I think it's attitude that made Castellanos leave. I mean, you look at Michigan State players, like defensive coaches, anybody, the one that they wouldn't want to prepare for is Castellanos because he's got the wheels.
Yes.
And he did well against Michigan State, and he got beat up a little bit and dinged up. And
he beat Alabama last week.
And that whole idea that he that Sims beat him out, Grayson James, or whatever his name is, that he beat him out. It's great, and that's what Boston College fans want to hear. But Castellanos beat himself and took himself out of the program. And in a first-year program, if you don't toe the line, people have to make an example of you, and that's how you establish a program long-term. So this whole narrative, like we would have been so much better if Castellanos didn't play, I call BS on that. And some of the evidence was last week. But
who would have been better if he didn't play?
Like some of the Boston College fans are like, well, if James had played the whole season long, and didn't beat Castellanos, it would have been a better situation. We're better for not having him here. You're better for not having his attitude, but he could do some things on the football field that you can't prepare for as a defense. And Michigan State is in a situation where they don't have to worry about the scrambling ability as much. And then the other thing too with Lonergan, we don't know his health status. Having not practiced yesterday, so that's an interesting thing to watch.
O'Brien said he'd be back today, and there's not going to be a problem for Saturday. It's what he says.
We'll see what happens. The thing I think you get from Michigan State players is there's not both those guys are good pocket passer types. There's not as much difference between those two guys where you have to be, you got to prepare for things that are drastically different between the two quarterbacks.
It was Ryan Eckley walking to class. He came on and spoke with media today. Very engaging guy. I feel good for that guy coming in from Florida. As a walk-on to try out, wins the job. 47.9 average last year, leads the Big Ten, despite all the cold weather games Michigan State had last year. Engaging personality. Good kid. That was a cool interview today. Did you think, Paul? Video here at SpartanMag.com. Yeah, by the way, give us a like here, subscribe to the channel. But Ryan Eckley today, how about it?
Yeah, that was cool. Like Bryce Behringer was engaging. I think back to Aaron Bates, he was really always an engaging interview. But it just goes to prove like how important. Well, he's got a huge role. I mean, kickoff guy. That's a big deal. That's not something he expected to do. Took it on. The punting aspect, you mentioned the 47 yards per punt last year, which is great. But the thing he's doing this year is adding touch to it.
School record, maybe.
Yeah, it was a school record, but he didn't. I don't think he had the. I think he could do it, but he didn't have the consistent ability to do different things with his punts to give them kind of a guy like Bryce Behringer became a guy that could pin people deep. Aaron Bates was a guy that excelled at pinning people deep. I think Ryan Eckley is becoming one of those guys that can do whatever you need him to do at punter, and he proved it last weekend with some of the pin downs that they had, one which led directly to a safety. But that's a huge weapon, and for him to have not only the massive leg, but also the ability to put touch on the ball, that's a really big deal. And, we talked about defensive being organized. I felt like special teams was as organized as I've seen it in terms of coverage, and it really helps when you have, effective kickoff guy, effective punter, and I didn't expect him to be as good as he was on kickoff. And I was wondering, maybe one of these is going to get loose because he hasn't done this a whole lot. But the whole operation on special teams was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the fact that Michigan State doesn't have a field goal kicker that they can rely on. But having talked to Eckley today, I feel a lot more confidence that if he misses a kick, it's not going to ruin his whole life where he's going to kind of go in meltdown mode. I think he's got a personality where it's like water off a duck's butt, and he's going to be able to handle that moving forward. I feel a lot better about some of those type of things. We still don't know where those other kickers are in relation to coming back, but special teams was pretty solid for Michigan State last weekend.
It was, and he has to manage all the leg swings he's putting in right now, and he's a big-time punter, and now he's working to be their long distance field goal kicker plus the kickoffs. He said yesterday, or was it today, it was kind of a lighter day to manage the leg swings that he's putting on there. They got two kickers out that are trying to come back with groin injuries right now. You don't want to max him out, but Eckley is an important guy. And let's say he emerges and becomes, hits a couple long distance field goal kickers. I mean, you're talking about a valuable player. He already is valuable, but that value could even be increasing right now.
Yeah, and the defense loves that guy too. Some of those guys were talking about what he means to the team, and if you've got a guy that can pin people deep or you can change the field position, he had some booming kicks. That's a really big deal, and it's going to matter in games.
And the coverage units, like you said, Gash and Cromwell going down there, looking like hungry players that want to get on the field. And that's when your bottom 40 gets stronger, which is the case with Michigan State right now, start showing up in places like that, and that's what's going on. Last year, well, before I get to that, Paul, as you know, Michigan's recycling rate has fallen 90% to 73% in recent years. Michiganders are squandering $105 million American dollars per year, Paul Konyndyk, by not taking back their cans and their bottles. So that's hurting our environment. So it's up to you to help your environment, help yourself, help your beaches, help your lakes, They're your lakes, your roads, your beaches. Take them back. Take them back. It helps put money in your pocket as well. Don't forget about that. So take them back. A message from Schupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and your Michigan State Spartans. Schupan, Paul Konyndyk, taking them back. You've been taking them back.
Always.
Now, last year, Boston College outrushed Michigan State 152 to 127. That's not going to happen this weekend, I don't think, Paul.
Yeah,
152 to 127.
There's a lot of talk, and some of the defensive players say today that Boston College wants to run the football. And I understand that, and that's all well and good, but you look at that Fordham game, and Fordham doesn't have anything on defense, and you would think with the Bill O'Brien coach team that they would just like cave them in rushing wise. What was it? 2.8 yards a carry, 3.8 yards a carry.
The first running back was 3.0, and the second running back was 3.3. The team overall was under 3. Talking about Boston College against Fordham. So 3.0 and 3.3, the top 2 running backs.
So to me, if I was covering, let's say Michigan State did that against Fordham, a lot of fans would be like, hey, yay, 66 points, that's great, and it is great. But that to me would be a red flag, and the rushing numbers, because I would expect more than that, and I would expect a higher rushing average. So if I'm coming into this one, if I'm Bill O'Brien, I'm like, we got to take a step forward in the run game, because you don't want to be, if you got a pocket passer, and Boston College has got 2 of them, you don't want to be one-dimensional against Michigan State. They've gotten better. It's going to be on the road here. I think the pass rush is going to be pumped up, but you got to be able to run the football effectively. And I think the thing that's lost in that box score and the 66-10 beatdown is the run game. I didn't think Boston College was great running the ball last year. I thought they had a good offensive line, and I thought Michigan State made some mistakes in that run game, in that rushing defense. I thought Michigan State was probably disappointed in their rushing defense in that game. If it had been a little bit better in that rain, maybe Michigan State. That's one of those things that you'd like to have back. But I think some of the running back personnel is the same. That Turbo Richard or whatever his name, he's back, and they did score 3 rushing touchdowns. So that's kind of against Fordham, but that yards per carry, it just makes you wonder.
It's curious,
So I think Phil O'Brien's going to be like, I know we scored 3 rushing touchdowns, but I want to see what they can do against Michigan State. I would be surprised if Michigan State doesn't outrush, Boston College, and that's just kind of my gut feeling. I also wonder, Aiden Childs did a really good job last year. The one thing he did well in that game was he was able to scramble for a lot, And I do think they played a lot of man-to-man defense too. Didn't they switch coverage?
Against Western?
No, against Boston College. Did Boston College play some?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think they did. They did play some man-to-man, and I think there were some scramble opportunities for Aiden Childs because of that.
Because Boston College played man.
Yeah, so I think if Michigan State doesn't outrush Boston College, that'd be a major disappointment. But that's one of the storylines for me to watch in that game is the running game. I felt like Michigan State with the reshuffled offensive line last year. With so many guys in different places, they really missed guys like Brocious and Phillips in that game. I felt like if they had Brocious and Phillips in that Boston College game last year, they could have rushed for more yardage. But I also think Michigan State has an advantage because of a big center who's very physical.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of more physicality and a lot more meat on that bone on the offensive line in terms of just setting the tone and just being physical and pushing guys back. And we saw that against Western Michigan. Boston College is going to be a better team, but they haven't played a Big Ten offensive line yet. They played Fordham. So this is going to be I wouldn't want to play an FCS team like that in my first game if I was Bill O'Brien. But I think Michigan State outrushes them, and I think that's going to be a huge part of this game.
Yeah, Michigan State, I think, is making progress toward becoming a team that is good on the ground on offense and good stopping the run on defense, which is the building blocks to winning college football basically in general across the country, but especially in the Big Ten, especially at Michigan State. Didn't have it last year, understandably, off and on as they were trying to get things established. A better chance to do it this year, especially with the defensive tackles being as good as deep as they are, inside linebackers as good as deep as they are, and the safeties being grounded and film junkies, like they said. Those are nice building blocks. Down defensive end position, pretty good. Dunnigan's pretty good in those things. Thompson coming off the bench now as a co-starter type. I think Michigan State is morphing into being a team that is not easy to beat week in and week out. We will see if that holds true on Saturday against Boston College. And a big one, a couple of good second-year coaches. O'Brien and Smith were considered two of the better hires in the country last year. I know Signetti came around and made a lot of noise. We'll see how that goes long-term. They'll be good this year, but long-term we'll wait and see. But O'Brien, Smith, those guys are really well-respected in the coaching industry, and it's going to be a good scrap between two well-coached teams, I think, on Saturday.
One of the things I'm going to be interested to see, and I'll ask your opinion on this, is the there's so much rotation on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's going to have to be dialed back a little bit against Boston College. You've got some. You've got that 3-4, and you've got a couple of edge guys. They don't have the big pass rusher that they had last year.
No.
But I just feel like some of the stuff that we saw, some of the pass protection stuff that we saw last weekend that Michigan State struggled with against Western, I just wonder if some of that isn't from flip-flopping and switching in and out. And it's good, and there's a huge long-term benefit to it. But can you do that against a Power 4 opponent and have the type of advantage that you want on the ground? That's kind of one of my questions. I'd assume that they might dial that back just a little bit. I think there will be a rotation, but will it be as heavy as it was against Western Michigan? I kind of am doubtful in that.
Right, and with those rotations, that included Connor Moore, who I thought had a pretty good game at right tackle. Over at left tackle, he was involved in one of the sacks. One of the other ones was a coverage sack. They blitzed. And it's hard to have a coverage sack during a blitz, but it was 6 blocking 6, and initially they had time to get it out. He rolls out and gets tackled. I think that might have been one Smith said he's got to be able to get that out earlier, even if it's an incompletion, although I don't remember what down and distance it was. There's one where Stanton Ramil, a lot of people thought that he gave up a sack on that one. We talked about it yesterday. We talked about it after the game. Brocious didn't have anyone to block, so he goes to find work, and he gives a chuck to the guy that Ramil was blocking, Tucker, number 11, good pass rusher. Ramil kind of had a handle on him. And, Tucker's a good one, but I thought Ramil was okay. And I asked Ramil about that yesterday. It looked like you had him. And, Brocious kind of, nothing against Brocious, but he tries to find work and actually bumps him off of Ramil. But Tucker, to his credit, had the ability to turn the corner with the balance to get that done. Asked Stanton Ramil about it yesterday, and he said, crap happens. He didn't care that much. He didn't say crap, though. He said the S word. I'm not going to say it here, but he was like, And, so on PFF, Stanton Ramil gets docked in his pass protection, and that one wasn't his fault. He had to work to stay with that guy, but I thought he had that one. But anyway, that was 2 starters over there. But the other one where Childs, it was to Ramil's side, and Childs, instead of climbing the pocket, retreated in the pocket, and Ramil had the guy. He was going to push him behind the quarterback, but because Childs came back, he pushed him into the quarterback. So that one goes against Ramil also. But why was Childs doing that? It's because Christian Phillips and Lepo kind of erred in handling a stunt over here. It's a couple of second stringers, to your point. So there's a stunt, and I think Phillips stayed with his guy too long, maybe should have passed him off. So that's the pressure here that ends up getting docked against Ramil. That was not his fault either. But to your point, Connor Moore on the left side with one of the sacks, and then 2 second stringers on the right side. Otherwise, pass protection might be clean. But they want to rotate guys and keep guys fresh through playing the long game for the course of the season, which could help you in November. I understand both of it. It'll be interesting to see if I think there will be some rotation there. Will it be as widespread? That's an excellent question.
But do you go down to like a 7-man rotation, or something like that? So I do think there is benefit. We saw it in 2021, like when Michigan State had a bunch of veteran offensive linemen, they did rotate, and I think by the end of the season, that offensive line was pretty good. Obviously, you had Kenneth Walker running the ball, but I think it did have benefit long term. So we'll be interested to see that. I also think, too, like with Western Michigan, some of the pass protection stuff, they didn't know what to expect necessarily. So you're doing a lot of stuff on the fly against a new coordinator. I do think there is value to having played Boston College before, seeing the same coordinator. I think there's value in seeing the guys on film, so you're not just chasing ghosts, to use a Jonathan Smith phrase. But this is going to be this is going to be an interesting game. And when Michigan State lost this thing last year, they had a 3-1 record, and I think a lot of people assumed it's one that got away, but it's not going to hurt them. They're still in pretty good position for a bowl game. But then things got real. Played Ohio State in the next game. You never know when these games are going to matter and how much they matter. Michigan State has to get this win this weekend. I think it's really big, not just for season momentum, not just for fan support, but in terms of like program where they're at.
Yes.
And we saw Michigan State last week take a huge jump from week 1 to week 2. going, from Florida Atlantic to then playing Maryland and playing really well in that second week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be interested to see what kind of jump Michigan State makes from week 1 to week 2 in this game. Obviously, I don't think there's this room to make as big a jump because they played terrible against Florida Atlantic and they played very well against Maryland. But I do think there's a good chance that a lot of things do get tightened up, and and some of the little details are better this week against Boston College, and I think they'll have to be because this is going to be a competitive game, one that Michigan State, I think, absolutely has to win. We've talked about that all preseason long about, what the schedule's like. I think there's some more winnable games on the schedule potentially. I don't want to overreact based on first week performances, but Michigan State needs this win, and I think this would do a lot to kind of bolster the program and give them momentum going into the season.
I agree, and I think they will get the win. And it's going to be interesting to see what the fans. I thought the fans were good last weekend. The students, we talked about it before, had to wait a long time to get in the stadium. Michigan State's got to figure that out one way or another somehow, because what you're going to get is students. They'll look at that line and they're like, I'm not going to wait. I don't want to wait in line for 45 minutes. I'm going to go back to the tailgate or whatever. You don't want that to be a situation where students are choosing to wait in line for 45 minutes before they get in. Concessions, we've heard a lot about that also. So game day operations need to improve for Michigan State all the way around. And the fans, I think, are eager and interested and lurking and looking for something to really support. And I think they're going to get a good show this Saturday. Paul Konyndyk, anything else?
Nope.
For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. I've been watching the VCast from Perles Plaza, East Lansing, Michigan with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.